My name is Clarence. I'm a Senior Director with ERA, and I'm really thrilled to be able to share with you about housing because it's something that I believe strongly in the sense that a house for a new couple is really very important, and I've seen some very interesting answers from the polls that you have just done. And by the look of it, majority of you, at least 72% of you, do not have your own place now. So I think that's why you are here tonight. You want to understand how you can start this process, but do it in the right way. And again, looking at the timeline, at least about 70% will be looking to get a place in the next 6 to 12 months, right? So that is very important. And then I'm very glad that none of you are worried about your employment. So I'm quite happy to hear that. And but definitely we are looking at a fairly long recession ahead. The last question is about whether your home is an investment. Majority of you, 61% of you, feel that it is an investment. I'm glad to hear that as well. For 22% of you, you don't think so, and there's actually quite a number of you who are not sure, right? So, but tonight I want you to discover for yourself whether is your home really an investment or is it just a place for you to stay in, right? So I prefer something that is interactive. So along the way, like what Mia said, you can put your questions in the chat box, and then we hope to also be able to answer you later in the Q&A. So we have about 40 minutes tonight, and I can't be covering a lot of aspects of the real estate market, but I have selected what I feel is important for you as a couple or for someone who is starting to look for a place. These are things that you should know. And so I'm just going to share my screen, and we're going to get started straight ahead. Right, so if you can see my screen, everyone can see that? All good? If you can see, just type Y in the chat box. Can everyone see it? If you can see, just type a Y in the chat box so that at least I know I'm on the right track. If you all can hear me loud and clear, that would be very important. Okay, good. A lot of you can see. Good. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Just going to close the chat box now so that I can start my. Okay, and I'm sure you saw this invite, how to COVID-proof your first home, or rather how to COVID-proof the purchase of your first home. And it's not just only during COVID that we need to be prudent or to be wise about this, but I think in the situation like right now, it's all the more important that we make right decisions, because the effects can be huge, right, in terms of what we do, whether we make a wrong choice or a not so wise choice. Okay, so we're going to look at that tonight. And how are we going to do it? Like I mentioned, we have only about 30 plus to 40 minutes. So we're going to look at data. I'm a very data-driven person, given my background in consulting, and I believe that data is important. But in the market right now, I think information is not the issue. In fact, there's an overload of information, and the important thing we want to understand is how do we interpret this information? What can you do by understanding this information that will help you to make a decision, right? So we're going to look at the overall market trend. The important things to look at in a house search, I'm just going to give you some important tips to consider, and there are other things involved, because a house search is something that is very comprehensive, but I hope to be able to at least help you guys with some practical tips. And then lastly is a financial plan. I always say that a real estate decision is a financial decision. So last week, I understand that for those of you who have attended the workshop, you have attended a financial literacy kind of course. So today we're going to look at it from another angle, which is in terms of looking for a house. I'm going to share a video. This is a video that I recently did with my daughter, and just to warm everyone up, and because the whole interview was about what to do when you are looking for a house, right? So I'm just going to share that right now.
Hi everyone, welcome to the EY.
Oops, sorry. I think I pressed.
Hi everyone, Welcome to the EY show. Today I am going to interview my Papa and ask him about housing matters. Hi Papa, welcome to my show. I know you're a realtor and you help people with housing. I have a few questions for you today.
Hello EY, thank you for inviting me to your show. So let's start with the questions you have.
Yep. Usually, I have 3 questions, so let's start with the first question and then go to the second question. First question, I plan to buy a house soon. As a young person, how should I plan my finances? Can you tell me more about the bank loan and CPF money?
Okay, so if you are going to buy a house, firstly, you use your own money, okay? Don't ask from Papa and Mommy.
Sure, there's money in your bank, you mean?
Yes, in your piggy bank.
Piggy bank?
So the TDSR limit now for anyone who is going to get a mortgage loan is 60% of your income. But I would normally advise a reverse approach to use only 40% of your monthly income to service your loan. That will give you a bigger buffer and a bigger safety net so that you don't overstretch yourself. So 40% of your monthly income to service your mortgage loan, that will be a good guide in terms of applying for a loan. And for the CPF part, I've actually mentioned in the previous video on how to use your CPF money, so check out the link here and you can find out more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foo, for explaining. Second question, should I choose a HDB flat or a condo?
Okay, that's a very good question, EY. So they are very different, and for our resale flats, they are all located in mature estates now. So you get a lot of amenities, but one thing to note is that a lot of them are older, more than 30 years old. So you may want to take note of that because that will affect the future resale value if the flats cross 40 years and beyond. So, but if you're planning more on the mid to long term, 5 to 10 years, then a condo will be a good option for you. There are a lot of resale condos to look at, and one category is actually executive condos from HDB. That will be a very good option for young couples who are just starting out. Like yourself, EY?
Okay, last question for you, Mr. Foo. What do you think about executive condo?
Okay, I mentioned earlier on about ECs, executive condos. A lot of them are also coming up in mature estates. A good thing about them is that they are actually subsidized housing from HDB. So for a buyer who's looking at executive condos, in a couple of years, in 5 years' time, they become privatized and you can sell it in the resale market, which will then be on par with resale condos around the neighborhood. So you're starting at a lower point, but you are able to sell it at resale prices later on, so that gives you a great advantage. So executive condo is a good consideration if you are looking to get the first condo for yourself. Is that the last question?
Yes.
Thank you, EY.
Thank you, Mr. Foo, for explaining, and thank you for joining me on the EY show today. Bye-bye, everyone. And bye-bye, Mr. Foo.
Okay, so that's just an introduction. Of course, not a lot of details with that, but I think that gives you a very brief idea of what you can do in terms of housing. The 3 property types in Singapore, I'm quite sure all of you are familiar with that if you're Singaporean, and which is HDB flats, condo and landed. Tonight, we're going to look specifically only at 2 of them, which is the HDB flats and landed. And if you have any question along the way, just feel free to ask them in the chat box and we will get back to them. Right, so but firstly, I think it's important for you to understand how is the Singapore's property or residential market make up of. All right, so HDB flats still, of course, is the majority. This is 2018 data. By now, there are a lot more HDB flats, about 1 million and 1.1 million. Right, so but in terms of the percentage, it has not changed. They still make up about 73% of available housing in Singapore. All right, and so for condos, of course, these numbers have also gone up. There's about 300 to about 340,000 condo units available in Singapore, and then of course, landed forms the smallest portion which is about 75,000. Right. One thing to note is that for landed properties, they don't really increase in numbers because there are designated zones in Singapore in which a landed house can be built or a landed house can be located. So landed houses are very limited. They don't increase in supply. The only two that are growing is the condominiums and the HDB flats. Right. So this is from SingStats, as in our Department of Statistics as of last year. The household and the household makeup in Singapore. Again, I think it's important to understand this. There's about 90% home ownership in Singapore. We have one of the highest home ownership rates in the world. The other one will be Switzerland. And since the start of the nation, the founding of the nation, Singaporeans have always been encouraged to own a home. And I think that gives a lot of stability to the society and also to our housing market. So it's interesting that in the last 10 years, it has gone up by about 2% here. And the resident households have also gone up. Right? By that, we mean that those who are forming a family, which is going to be like yourself, so you form a household unit, and the number has gone up, which is very expected because there are more families, there are more young people getting married. Right? But one thing to note is that the number of people in a household has actually come down. Again, this by and large is due to the lower birth rate in the nation. So you find that last time when you're growing up, you have siblings, you could have 2, 3 other siblings, and together with your parents, you could have about 4 to 6 people. But right now, generally, it's about 3+, and a lot of families have only 1 kid or maybe no children at all. So why do I want to highlight this to you? Because generally it means that there will be more demand for housing because the population is increasing, but the household size is getting smaller. Right, the household size is getting smaller, so there will be a general demand for housing in years to come. Right, and again, this is our latest population statistics. So as of last year, we're about 5.7 million. And one thing to note as well, if some of you could remember years ago, we have this population white paper, and this is still something that the Singapore government is keen to achieve. Recently, Minister Josephine Teo mentioned that if we cannot get 6.9 by 2030, maybe 6.5 will also be feasible. The simple reason is because our population is aging, and we do need renewal in terms of the population to keep the economy going, to fill jobs, and so on and so forth. Right? So this number is set to grow, and if there are more people in the nation, then there will be more demand for housing as well. All right, so we're going to look at HDB firstly, and I'm sure all of you will be very familiar with these 3 categories, because if you are in this workshop today, you are looking, like a large number of you are looking for a new place. I'm quite sure you will have done your research. There's a lot of information right now online. We have the BTO, resale, and executive condos. So, but one big difference amongst the 3 is, of course, the income ceiling. As of now, for BTO flats, the income ceiling has been raised to 14,000. For resale, you definitely don't have any income ceiling. It's a very free market. And then for ECs, the income ceiling has also been increased to 16,000. And this move by the government for both BTO and EC mainly is to allow more middle income Singaporeans to be able to still get subsidized housing and not be penalized because of their higher income between husband and wife. Right? So, but these 2 obviously are still subsidized housing. So there's a lot of advantages in terms of getting either BTO or EC from the government. But then there are other very practical issues that I've come across in my 7 years in the industry, is that there are buyers who need to be near their parents for very practical reasons. They need to be near the workplace, or they want to be near a school, which is something that we're going to look at later. So BTO and EC may not give you that option. Why? Because a lot of them are located in more newer estates, I can put it that way, that are coming up. So not fully mature estates yet, but neither exactly brand new. Right? So for example, Punggol and Sengkang are 2 good examples in the eastern side of Singapore, and then in the northern side, you do get quite a few of ECs at Admiralty, Sembawang, Woodlands area. So these are in up and coming areas. So you may not get everything that a mature estate offers, but so you need to weigh the balance if you need to be near a certain location, or you are open to move further out. right? And but this is one thing that I always share when I do public talks or even with my personal clients, is that the HDB market is one that is not static, right? There's ups and downs, but generally in the last 10 years, you can see I took the data from 2011 to now, which is a 10 years time frame, and you can see from this graph here that the HDB prices have indeed come down over the years, right? I've put a few markers here. These are very important events that took place. So you can see that from 2011 to 2013, the prices actually increased dramatically, and across the whole of Singapore, not only the HDB but other types of housing also increased in prices until this final event here, which is very important, in the second quarter of 2013, when the government introduced another cooling measure called the TDSR, which stands for Total Debt Servicing Ratio, which caps a person's loan at 60% of their monthly income. So this includes other loans, credit card, car loans, any type of loans, but majority for most people, most Singaporeans, the loan will be taken up by a mortgage loan, right? And so with that cap, you can see that prices in fact start to go down, and they go down quite dramatically, right? And then they kind of like stabilize about 2015. And what do I mean by minister block? Okay, later I'm going to explain to that. And because there was something that the minister said, which then caused another downtrend or prices going down in HDB prices, until this eventful adjustment, which is the CPF change, which allow more mature buyers, older buyers, to be able to purchase HDB flats and still be able to utilize their CPF money to service their mortgage, right? So this is more of a CPF issue rather than a HDB issue, but then the impact is greater on the HDB flats than private condos. So what's this minister block that we're talking about? This is in 2013. Minister Lawrence Wong actually shared this in his kind of like his personal blog on the housing market in Singapore, specifically for HDB, right? And of course, it's not something that is a mystery or unknown. It has been there, out there. It's something I've been saying for a long time as well. But I think to put it on record and in the public domain, it caught the attention of many Singaporeans, right? So it says that be it a HDB or a condo, generally once the age of the flat or the property exceeds 30 years, prices will start to come down. For condominium, in fact, the benchmark is not even 30. Generally, once the condo crosses about 20 years, the prices start to come down much earlier than HDB. Right? So, and he said this was data from HDB and MND. And as of 2013, right, this was 7 years ago, at least 7% of our flats are already more than 40 years. Another 29% are between 30 to 40 years, right? And then, of course, he made it very clear to date, out of that 1.1 million flats in Singapore, only 4% has been selected for SERS, which is selective en bloc. Right, so it says that for the vast majority of flats, the leases will eventually run out and the land will be returned to the state. Right, and this was the thing that created a big hoo-ha. It opened up a can of worms, and then since then, a lot of owners and buyers became very fearful of what will happen to the HDB flats. But the thing is, Mr. Wong actually gave a very technical and correct answer. There was nothing wrong. But I think when it's put forth like that, it becomes really scary. But I want to just draw your attention to this part here. Why do I say that? Because this was in 2013, right? And it's been 7 years now. So there's a lot more flats that will have crossed this benchmark age, which I feel is very important. And so as of now, at least about 35% of all HDB flats are already more than 35 years old. Okay, so this is a very key number to remember because that affects the housing prices. We're going to look at a case study, and this is my own place. I used to live in Marine Parade. I grew up in Marine Parade as well. Really loved the neighborhood, and so I used to have a 3-room corner unit in Marine Crescent. and I sold the place. This was my marital home, by the way. I bought this place at a point of time where a lot of people were questioning, hey, why do you even buy Marine Parade? Because at that time, I paid 240,000 for this place with my wife, and at that time, 240,000 could buy a 4-room flat in a lot of other estates, right? So, but in Marine Parade, you can only get a 3-room. So a lot of my friends, even my parents, questioned me, why are you doing that? And but we eventually sold the place in 2014 for double the price. And but I just want to draw your attention, because in each subsequent year, there are other units in my block that sold. Okay, and just for consistency of comparison and data, I chose only corner units because there are corridor units, then that will be an invalid comparison. So I chose only corner units, same size and similar floor level, right? That means those second, third floor, I also exclude them. So you can see that, in fact, in 2015, just 1 year after me, a higher floor unit sold for a lower price. And then 4 years later, another higher floor unit sold for an even lower price. And then just of last year, and I'm sure this year there are other transactions which I have not really checked yet, but as of last year, a similar floor level unit sold for 355,000. Right, so the total drop from my time to last year, which is just a gap of 5 years, is 26% drop. Right, so it's an annual drop of 5.2%. And this is not just unique to Marine Parade. In fact, Marine Parade is one of the estates that is doing better, because along these few years, the MRT line was announced, right? And my block is in fact very near the new station. So all these things actually help to hold up the prices of a place, of a condo, of a flat. But nonetheless, because of the age of the estate, there will be a depreciation, right? So it's a very significant drop between my time and my neighbor. So over a matter of 5 years, you are seeing 125,000 drop. So my question today is, how long do you need to save 125,000? That's a very important question to consider as a couple, because depreciation is real. No one is immune to it. This is how the market is like right now. So I've done other talks where I've used examples from Ang Mo Kio, Bedok. These are all the older estates, right? And in fact, the annual drop is more than 5%, right? So the question today is, I want to ask, if you're looking to go into the HDB market, you need to be aware and cognizant that these are very real trends. This is a real data. And I think I want to put it up here tonight because this is something that I've spoken to many people before. Some of them are aware of the issue. Many of them chose to turn a blind eye to it, right? But these are real numbers. And again, I want to ask, if you're going to take a hit of about 100,000 to 120,000 on the property you're going to purchase, you need to think in terms of savings. How long are you going to take as a couple to save this much? Because if you calculate it like that, then losing this amount of money will really start to make you wonder, should you make this purchase in the first place? Right. So the question is, you may think, Clarence, is it that bad, all across? Like I mentioned earlier on, about 35% of our current HDB stock is more than 35 years old. So there are newer flats to choose from. There are a lot of flats that's about 10 to 20 years, and you may ask, then how do I choose a HDB flat? I think a key point to note is that the lease left is really very important, and because the older the flat, the value in terms of when you come to sell it will definitely be lower. All right, so that's one key thing to look at. And of course, whether this flat or this block or this precinct is near any new development that's coming up. By that I mean, is there going to be a new station? Is there going to be a new mall? Is there going to be, in fact, even a school that's coming up? So these are all helpful things that will at least help to sustain the value of the flat, right? And but I have had some of my clients who need to buy at certain estates, certain old estates, for very practical reasons, because they need to be near their family, they need to be near the parents, so that there can be someone to take care of the kids in future. So I realize that there are all issues like that, right? But I'm saying that if you don't have all these other considerations, then definitely it's much better to choose a newer flat, right? A newer flat, right? And because that will help you to guard against this price depreciation in years to come. Okay, so I just want to leave it here for now for the HDB flats. Later on during the Q&A when we have more time, feel free to just ask questions over there. I'm going to move into the next segment, which is on the condo or the private residential. And this is one very interesting data that's come out recently. And these are the 5 new launches that have been doing fairly well in the market in the last 2 months, right, during the circuit breaker. In fact, a lot of the units have been taken up in the circuit breaker. And one thing that the developers do look at is that are these HDB upgraders, and one way to see that is by the address or the registered address of the buyers. So you will see here that by and large, a lot of the buyers are actually HDB upgraders, right? So this could be people who have sold their flat. It could be a BTO flat that they got from the government, and they have some gains from it, and they sold that, and then they decided to upgrade to the condo. So this is a very real trend again, and people who can do this, of course, there's a lot of background info that we may not get, but at least I'm quite sure that a lot of them would have at least made some money from the HDB flats. If not, they will not be able to sell and do an upgrade. Recently, I've done a lot of virtual tours, and then with the opening on Friday, I've done actually quite a number of viewings. Just today alone, I've done quite a number. And so for my resale condo units, I would say more than 50% of the people who come to view are all upgrading from HDB. So they just sold their HDB flats, and then they are now looking to move to a condominium. Another interesting thing is this is the general age group between 31 to 40. Right, so I'm not sure how many of you are in this age group, or do you belong to this segment, which is 21 to 30. But again, this is not surprising, because generally people who are in this age range will have saved up a fair bit of money, and they will have at least stayed in the HDB flats for a couple of years before they can sell. So the upgraders tend to be around this age group, which will be important for you, because you do want to take a long-term plan when you come to plan your own finances, right? So this category, definitely, they're a lot more stable in their finances. They will have a lot more savings as well. Well, I'm going to look at the condo trends, because we look at the HDB trends, and so the condo trends from 2015 to 2020, the last 5 years, all right? And the simple reason is that we have something called the seller stamp duty, which is something like MOP for HDB. So for condo owners, generally they will hold their properties for at least 3 years, if not 4, so that they don't have to pay this tax called SSD, right? So which is why I take a 5 years time frame. But you can see they were subject to ABSD just about 2 years ago, exactly 2 years ago, July 2018. But the important thing is that the prices have pretty much gone up in this segment, unlike for HDB, where you can remember you have kind of like come down. Right, so the average pricing about 5 years ago, we are looking at about $1,000 per square foot. Average price nowadays is $1,600. Okay, this is across the whole of Singapore. Of course, there are districts that are more expensive, there are districts that are less expensive, but on the whole, you can see that in the private condo market, prices have gone up 60%, right? 60%, right? So again, this is something that I just want you to have an idea of. And one of the reasons why this segment is going up, because there are foreigners in our midst, there are new PRs in our midst, and the only category of housing that they can buy in Singapore are condos, right? So of course, PRs, they can buy HDBs, but they have to be PRs for 3 years before they can buy. So a lot of them find that it's too long a wait, and landed, they can't even buy. So condo is the only segment they can buy, and so that really explains why the demand for private residential will always be consistent in Singapore. One tip for you, just now we look at how to choose a HDB flat. When it comes to residential, private residential condo, the URA master plan is a very important tool. And this guides Singapore land planning and land usage for a 5 to 10 years period. and it was just updated last year. It's updated every 5 years. So you see a lot of colors here, right? So the colors or the legend will tell you, like purple is industrial, and then if you zoom in, typically blue is for commercial, and then you get pinkish or this beigey tea color is for residential, right? So the master plan will always give us a very good idea of the government's plan to develop a certain place, what's coming up in the next few years, and this is where you can see how the whole estate and neighborhood will develop. So as a potential condo purchaser, this is something to look at. This is something I look at very often when I'm helping my own clients, because we want to make sure that we are selecting a place where there's more development, there's maybe parks that are going to be added, there are going to be schools added, and all these things, right? So it's important to take a look if you are considering the condos, right? So the master plan, you can easily go to URA website. You can find there are a lot of details and description of the different estates, Bishan, what the government is going to do, Marine Parade, what is the government is going to do. So it's a very good tool to look at if you are looking at condos. Right. The third area I'm going to look at is policies very quickly, and there are two major policies I just want to bring up. This is the ABSD, which some of you could be familiar with, is often mentioned, but this is what has been changed since July 2018, and this is as of now. And for Singapore citizens, there's no tax on the first property, naturally, because we encourage home ownership. So the only tax that you pay is called buyer stamp duty, which is 4%, and for properties that are more than $1 million. If it's less than $1 million, it's 3%, right? So, but once you go into a second property, you're looking at 12%, and then third is 15%. One thing to note is that Singapore has been introducing cooling measures since for the past 10 years. In fact, it started about 2009, and the one thing about ABSD is that in this past 10 years, it has only gone up. It has never come down, right? So a lot of people have been asking me, especially during this COVID period, they say, hey, Clarence, is government going to reduce the ABSD? My foreign clients ask me the same, is your government going to reduce it? Chances are they would not, because even with this in place, there's still a lot of people buying, in fact, for the second and third property. So can you imagine if the government is to take this away, then it will create unhealthy bubble. So, but if you're looking at your first property, not to worry, because there will be no tax for you, because again, like I mentioned, the Singapore government is very, very supportive of home ownership. And if you're looking at HDB, there are a lot of grants that will help you, proximity grant, first-timer grants, all these things which will help to bring down the total cost of your first home if you're looking at HDB. Right, so it's just something to bear in mind, because I always take a fairly long-term planning for my clients. So some of them are buying their first home now, but more than 50% of them usually tell me, hey, in about 4 to 5 years time, we do plan to buy our second property, and it's something that has to be planned and done right now, not later on, because if not, it will be too late. And this is something that all of you have if you are a salaried person, if you're not self-employed, but I'm not sure how many of you really bother to go into CPF website to take a look, right? But this is the allocation rates to your OASA and MediSave, right? So one thing to really note is that your mortgage loans, if you're taking a bank or HDB loan, you can use CPF to pay, and it comes from your ordinary account, all right? And but the thing is, our contribution from our monthly pay to the account actually decreases as you get older, right? So if you're 35 and below, you're at the maximum contribution rate now of 23%. But once you hit 35, it's 21, and then once you go to 45, it becomes 19, right? So I'm not going to consider the 50 plus, right? Because this is not the category that most of you are in. But when you're buying your first home, usually you're definitely in the first two lines, right? So it's something to take note. Why? Because your contribution will be lesser, but nonetheless, you're still using the same account to service your loans. So the basic understanding is that you will have lesser money to service your loans, right? So it's very important to get your mortgage planning done right. It's important to get your financial done right, and this is something that I always do with my clients in terms of calculating this part, because you don't want to be faced with a situation where your OA is unable to support your mortgage loan. Right, so we're going to take a look at a video that I've done about how do you use CPF money to service your mortgage.
In the recent OCBC survey, it reported that 2 out of 3 Singaporeans do not have enough savings in their bank accounts to last them for the next 6 months. Wow, that's really a scary thought. I'm not sure if you ask yourself whether you are one of those 2 who do not have enough savings in your accounts to last you and your family for the next few months. In the middle of April, it was also reported that 17,000 people applied for a deferment in their mortgage loan payments. Now that's a lot of people, and more than a month has passed, and I'm sure the number has gone up. So today I want to talk about a very important subject, which is our CPF ordinary account. Most of us use our OA account to service our mortgage loans, and the question I want to ask you today is, do you have enough money in your OA account to service your loans for the next 12 months? There are some myths when it comes to the usage of the CPF ordinary accounts. Today I'm going to debunk 3 myths, and this will help you in terms of understanding how to use your CPF money to service your mortgage loans. A lot of people have told me, Clarence, by emptying my CPF ordinary account, then I will be able to get a much lower loan quantum. Well, that is true in a sense, but there is no safety net, especially in the economic downturn like now. So I always tell my clients it's good to have a buffer in your CPF OA account, and I always give them as a rule of thumb at least 12 months of mortgage payments in their OA account. For example, if your mortgage payment is $2,000 a month, then you should have at least $24,000 in your OA account, which will last you for 12 months of mortgage payments. At the sale of your property, you will need to return to your OA account the CPF money that you have used to service your mortgage. But there's another component that many people are not aware of, and that's the accrued interest. Essentially, this will be the interest that you will have earned over the years if you have not drawn down on your ordinary account. And many people get a rude surprise at the sale of their property because they don't realize that not only do they have to return their CPF money to their own account, they also have to return the accrued interest. And this accrued interest can be a substantial amount if it's accumulated over a number of years. So as a guide to my clients, I always say the lesser CPF money you use, the smaller the accrued interest that you have to return to your account at the sale of their property. The CPF allocation rates will change as we get older. If you are 35 years and below, you are enjoying the maximum allocation rate of 23% to your OA account. But you're 35 and older, it becomes 21%, a drop of 2%. But when you get to 45 years and older, it becomes 19%, which is another drop of 2%. So you can see that the allocation rate is actually decreasing over the years. So this is very important when it comes to mortgage planning, to understand that the contribution to your OA account doesn't stay the same over the years. So it's always good to have a safety net in your CPF OA account to ensure that you have enough money to service your mortgage loans. Our CPF money is a wonderful tool in helping us with our mortgage payments. The important thing is to plan well and to use it properly. Thank you for joining me today at Property with Clarence, and I'll see you the next time.
Right, so I'm just going to continue from here, and this is the what we call the property price index in Singapore. One good thing about Singapore is that our market is very transparent. We have a lot of data, but like I said earlier on, it's one thing to have data, it's another thing to make sense of the data, right? And of course, we're going through a recession now. I'm quite glad a lot of you are sober about it, and it's going to be a fairly long-drawn recession. In the last 2 months, a lot of people have asked me, hey, what do you think? It's going to be a V-shaped recovery, U-shape, it's going to be L, it's going to be W. There's a lot of theories out there by economists and the analysts, right? But are we at the bottom here, which is point C? I don't think we are really at the bottom yet, right? So, but one thing to note is that, point B and D, we will never know until we're past A and C, right? So that's always the nature of the market. It's impossible to time the bottom part of the market, and I always say it's like trying to catch a falling knife. You can never time it. So the important thing is to always get your financial done properly. Instead, buy something that you need at the location that you need as well. So, but if you're asking me at this point of time, the Singapore's market a good time to buy, I would say yes, because prices tend to be lower, interest rates are also lower. So for a lot of you, you're new couples as you plan to get married probably in the next 6 to 12 months, you definitely need housing. So you're not speculators. So definitely it's a good time to buy if you buy the right place, right? So we're somewhere here right now in the market. Okay, so I'm going to end soon. So I always firmly believe this, especially for new couples, newlyweds. You know, a house is really a place where you can build your dreams, or not. You could have nightmares as well. What do we mean by that? If it's a wrong choice, if it's a condo, you got to stick with it for at least 3 years. If it's a HDB, you got to stick with it for at least 5 years. And I've seen couples, I've seen cases where incorrect decision was made, right? And so for many years they have to bear with that. But more than that, you know, it creates a lot of tension in the family and in the marriage, which I feel is unnecessary. So choose wisely. Let it be, you know, a place where both of you can create your future plans together, create your dreams together. And I just want to end with this story because one of my clients texted me this some time ago. He almost bought a place in Bedok Reservoir. This is a flat, and this was before he engaged me. And they were looking at this place, and they were really wanting to buy this. I think it was a 4-room flat for about 600 plus thousand. I remember correctly, it was about 630, 640. At the end, it didn't go through, which I was very glad for them. And then when they spoke to me, I understood what they were looking for, and then I suggested that we look at somewhere else. Right? Eventually, they bought a place in Pasir Ris, and they bought a 4-room flat as well, and they bought it for 400,000. 400,000, right? And the good news is that when the central the Cross Island line was announced, they're going to get a station there. But more than that, is that one day he texted me and he thanked me. He said, if not, if they have overcommitted themselves and went for that flat that cost like 600 plus thousand, then he will not have been able to make certain career choices that he has done now, because the financial burden will be too huge, and you know, he's really not sure if with that kind of certain career direction that he wanted. But because they bought somewhere much affordable in price, and it was not a shabby place. Okay, Pasir Ris is not a kampong, right? It's still a very good place, a very nice flat. I've been there after they renovated. He said because of that, you know, he had full confidence to make that choice, and he's very happy with where he is now. So, so this is one of the things I'm always very happy for when I help couples to make the right choices, because, or they just had their first baby, the kid was just born just 2 months ago, right? So, so this is what I mean. Let it be a place where both of you can dream together, plan your life together, and you should be like that, right? So that's all from me. And tonight's webinar is really, you know, helped by Cornerstone Community Services. So I want to thank them for inviting me to have this chance to share with all of you. More than happy to connect with you guys on social media. So if you want to find me on Facebook, you can't find Clarence though. You can find me by my Chinese name. So that's my Facebook profile, or on LinkedIn, which I do share quite a fair bit on my take on the real estate market, right? So, but thank you for this time, and I'll pass it back to I think Mei Yi.
So yeah, really thank you, Clarence, for taking the time to share with us. I'm just going to do a bit of announcements before I wrap up tonight's session. Yeah. In the coming weeks, this Saturday, we'll have another webinar that will talk about strengthening marriages in COVID-19. This is especially good for couples who have been married for a few years, and it's good to come and revisit and remember, you know, why you got together. Yep. So if you want to find out more, you can find out on our details on our Facebook. Have a good evening, and all the best to those who are looking for homes. We pray that you get a good place that you can establish your home in. Yes, good night, everybody.